All right. Hello, everybody. This is Yelena Subasic with Massey Consulting. Welcome to our January CloudBytes on naming convention best practices. And we're just going to wait a minute just to let some time for other people to join and give them a chance to join. And we'll start in a minute. I hope everyone's staying safe and warm if you're snowed in. Um, all right. Barbara, what do you think? Do you want to wait a
Yep,
few more minutes or
we
just
can begin.
okay. So just a few things before we start. I just want to let everyone know that we will be sending out a recording of this webinar tomorrow if you need to refer back to it. And then also at the end, we'll have some time for questions. But if you think of anything during the session, feel free. There should be a chat box to the right in the GoToWebinar panel. So feel free to type it into the chat box and we'll reference it at the end. So thank you for joining today, and I'll pass this over to Barbara.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Yelena. Welcome today to our January CloudBytes Naming Conventions Best Practices. And I'm going to go ahead and get started. So a little bit about introductions. A little bit about Massey Consultant. It was founded in 2002. It's comprised of CPAs and accountants who have numerous technical certifications. They've been a Sage Intacct Premier Partner since 2013, a Sage Intacct President's Club in 2014, 2015, and 2017, a Microsoft Gold Partners for Dynamics GP. Massey is ranked in the top 300 small businesses in Southeast USA, and they are also contributors to NCACPA blogs and others. And then a little bit about myself. Again, my name is Barbara Race. I'm a Sage Intacct consultant. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Accounting. I have been a Sage Intacct user since 2012, and I am Sage Intacct certified. I have an Adaptive Insight implementation under my belt, and I have been a speaker at several events. So let's talk a little bit today about naming conventions and what our agenda is going to entail. So why naming conventions? Why are they important, and where can we see naming conventions? So there's several areas within Intacct where naming conventions will be helpful for you to find things, to organize things, and they'll be under financial report, custom reports, projects, customers and vendors, attachments, multi-entity shared, and account groups. So we're going to cover those areas today in our discussion. So like the little baby says, you named me what? So have you ever set up something in the system and then you don't know what you called it and where to find it? So that's where naming conventions comes into play. So why naming conventions? Well, again, like in our little comic here, Calvin's asking, what a ripoff. They say if you connect these dots, you get a picture. But look, I did it and it's just a big mess. And Hobbes, who's always very smart, says, I think you're supposed to connect them in order that they're numbered. Rules. Everything's got to have rules, rules, rules. And we know that is the same thing when we're working within Intacct. If we set up certain things with rules, it's easier to find. So again, why naming conventions? For effectiveness. So you want to be able to find what you've created in the system, whether it be a report, a custom view, an account name, an account group, and you want to use those for ease of use so then you can create your reports and get what you want out of Intacct so your end results give you what you want and you have ease of use in creating those different reports. Just a word of advice when you're using the naming conventions, one thing to think of is to use initials. So what do I mean about that? Well, use the company's initials, If this is a report that will be used by others in the company so they can find things. If it's a personal report, you can use your own initials, but use something that will help you remember how you named this. So if we looked at our first area for naming conventions, and we talked about different areas that we're going to review today, and financial reports is one of them. So you start out with the financial reports, and you have your quick start financial reports, and now you've created financial reports for the company that are different than the quick start reports. So how do I find those? How do I make it convenient and easy for me to find them? The best way is to always start with the general ledger and then find your financial reports. And you can create custom views in lieu of folders. Everybody thinks that if I could put them in a folder, I'll be able to find them easier. But within Intacct, there are no folders. So you want to be able to create a filter using the naming conventions and then put them into your multiple views or folders, as people call them. So one of the things is to plan ahead by using naming conventions and thinking about how you'll be able to create your views. So some of the examples are, I've created some reports and I have my company JLR. So I've named these reports using the initials JLR, and I've named them JLR balance sheet for the US, JLR income statement, etc. And now I have different ways that I can go ahead and do some views within Intacct. So I'm going to pop over to my demo company and kind of give you some ideas of how to do this. So I'm in my demo company, and if I go to General Ledger, and I'm in the new UI, so if people are not used to that, that's what I'm currently using. So to get to that, I'm in the beta UI, and I go to my financial reports. And now you see I have this large list of financial reports that have been created. Well, I don't want to see all those. I just want to find the financial reports that are important to me. So what I've done is I've created views. So if I look at my JLR reports, now I can see all my JLR reports pop up there. And how did I do that? I went under Manage Views and I created a new view. But since I've already have the view, I'm going to just show you how to edit it. So if I go into my view, I've selected the columns that I want to include on my view, and I walk through the little tools here. I didn't change anything in my column sequence, but what I did was I put a filter on my financial report. So I put, for the name of the financial report, if it starts with JLR, bring that into my view. So that's what I have done here. So now remember, when I'm on this, and this is my view, if I click it back to all, I see everything. But if I go back to my views, I've created several different ones. So by my naming conventions, I have in essence created these filters or folders where I can find different reports. So this one just is by the name cash flow. So I can see all the cash flow reports if that's what I'm responsible for creating. And then the other thing is, if I just want to see US reports, I can see all the financial reports that are available out there with the different US designation on them. So again, use the system to help you do your naming. I wanted just to point out for the cash flow reports that I have the quick start cash flow report, and then I have two company cash reports that I've created. So now I can get into those very easily. So again, use the views to help you with your filtering. So the next area that we're going to talk about for naming conventions is going to be custom reports. Now, custom reports are a little different. Again, use initials to help you with your custom reports. Don't make it too complicated or difficult. There are no views on the custom report, so that's why it's important to have a good naming convention for that, and then you can use just a lookup to find the different reports that you've created. Again, remember, there's no custom views with custom reports. So again, I have a couple examples here. I have created for some JLR for my company again, and then different reports that I have named. So I'm going to go back over to my demo company, and I'm going to go into my excuse me, reports. And I'm going to go into my custom reports. And again, it's going to show me the whole list. And you can see there's no views up here. But because I know I called these JLR, if I type in JLR and hit enter, it's going to bring me the list of the reports that I created in the system for JLR. So again, use initials to help you keep your reports together. On projects, you'll have the project ID and the project name. Let the system give you the project ID. You can create the project ID. You can have the project automatically number your project IDs. Don't reinvent the wheel when naming your projects. If you're using Salesforce or a CRM, use the names from there as the project name, or use an opportunity name. Use something that will help you remember what the name is. So if you have a contract with a name, Salesforce or CRM, use those to help you with the projects. For customer and vendors, the same thing. Allow the system to give you the ID. Use names that should be on all correspondence. Remember that names can be changed, IDs cannot. So for example, if you are trying to pay a vendor at 2 locations, you could set up the vendor, let the ID come from the system, be generated by the system, and then name your one vendor Time Warner Cable Ohio and Time Warner Cable California. And then say the Time Warner Cable Ohio closes its location and now you pay Time Warner Cable Illinois, you can go into that vendor and you can change the name. If you had named if you had given the ID like TWC Ohio, or if Time Warner becomes Spectrum or someone else, you want to make sure that you can change the name and not have to have the ID not have anything to do with that name. So that's a suggestion there. For attachments, again, use the auto numbering for attachments. It allows you then with attachments, you can drag and drop. If you have folders specific to vendors, customers, etc., you don't want those to be on the business. You want those to be on your business network, not in Intacct. So for folders, you want to make sure that they're very generic. AP, AR, 2018 AR, 2018 AP, so something generic. But for the names of the attachments, the examples could be like TWC and then the invoice number, or TWC and the date, or TWC Ohio and the invoice number. So those are just some naming conventions examples there for when you want to bring attachment names in. So remember with attachments, you can do the drag and drop. You want to make sure that you add main folders for your attachments, like AP folder, AR folder, GL folder. And you can find those by going into the company and the attachment folders and click add. You can add folders specific to employees. They have to be users in Intacct, and you can find those by going to the My Preferences and then add the folder that you want to be your default attachment folder. And then if you have other users who you need to add attachment folders to, you want to go into the user and then click on their preferences and add that attachment folder there and save it. So if you needed to add the numbering sequence for attachment, if it wasn't set up, anywhere that you need it to now change the IDs in Intacct to be self-numbering, you could go into the document numbering and then you could add what you want for the different types. So in this instance, if you wanted to do the attachments, create the attachments numbering scheme you want, and then you would enable the auto numbering for attachments. For the multi-entity shared, you may want to have your entity start with an E For locations, you may want to use L, so you know that L stands for the location ID, E is for the entity ID. For account groups, again, you want to think about growth. You want to think about change in the organization when you start to create these. So again, if you are going to use your own personal initials on things, if you move into a different position, or the company grows and you have other people working on that, you want to be able to have them have access and be able to easily find it. So that's where go ahead and use initials more to the company. Again, if it's a personal report, that's fine to use your own personal initials. But if these are shared reports, use company initials. Use something that is related to the company in your naming convention. So the examples we have here, you've started off with the company initials, and then it's an income statement, and then a little bit of description about what the report is. I'm sorry, the account group is, because we're talking about account groups here. So you know that you're using this account group on an income statement, and then it's for department and a gross margin. So if you're creating unique financial reports that will need different types of account groups, this is the way that you can name them. If you had like a board of directors income statement, you could call it for the company JLR, BOD, income statement, so you know it was board of directors, some way that you can then search when you're looking for your account groups. So remember, for naming conventions, document IDs, use document IDs for auto numbering. Do not use leading zeros. So if you're going to have a document ID and you don't want to start it with 00001, use it 1, 2 to start it with, or use a letter to start your examples. Customer would be C, vendor would be V, E for entity, etc. So just something to think about when you're setting up your auto numbering in Intacct. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, Barbara, I actually had one earlier. So I guess when you were talking about the custom reports, what is the difference between custom reports and financial reports?
Okay, the financial reports are the group of reports that you could put together for any financial purposes. A custom report may be something that you cannot find in another module. So for example, in my description, let's see if I can bring over my demo company here real quickly. So I want it to have, and you find custom reports under platform services or customization. So that's where you would find those. So I needed a specific employee list, and it wasn't the reports that you find under the different modules. Usually you cannot add anything or customize them. So the custom reports lets you go ahead and create a report with more information than you could find in a module. So I'll use the example under the general ledger for the trial balance. You can only get very specific information on the trial balance. It's a canned report. If you went into the custom reports, you could, for example, create a trial balance that may have dimensions on it, so you could look at it that way. So that's what the custom reports are.
Okay. If anybody else has any questions, feel free to type them up in the chat box. We'll give it a few seconds to see if any questions pop up. Not seeing anything right now, Barbara.
Okay, and while we're waiting for that, if anybody does have anything, thank you. And remember that our next CloudBytes is February 7th at 2 p.m. and it's going to be about dimension relationships. So watch in the newsletter and for emails how to sign up for that. If you do have questions, please reach out to us. We'll be happy to answer any questions that come up after our session here. And again, thank you all for joining us.
All right, I think we're good, Barbara. Thank you, and thanks everyone. Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.